you, Sabrina, for joining me today. Could you start by introducing yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. My name is Sabrina Putnam, and I'm the Associate Director of Admissions at Pomfret School in Pomfret, Connecticut.
So could you first tell us where Pomfret is located and what the environment in Pomfret, Connecticut is like?
Sure. We are in the northeast corner of Connecticut, so really close to Massachusetts and about an hour from Boston. That's one of the major airports we use. So Logan Airport is probably the primary airport. Hartford is also another close airport. And then we're about 3 hours from New York City. We're in a pretty remote, quiet corner of Connecticut. In fact, it's called the quiet corner of Connecticut. And that has a pretty big impact on our school because we are so remote. We certainly have access to lots of things and can get anywhere we need to with ease. But the sense of our community is a rural one, and that allows us to feel very connected, but also very safe and independent in our own quiet little, as I say, quiet little community. It's also it is the best, or the county that had the fewest cases this year, which also makes us feel a little bit, again, more protected and safe.
Yeah. So how does being located in this quiet corner of Connecticut in a more rural and certainly safe area, I'm sure that's attractive to families, but how does that impact and influence a student's experience once they are on campus at Pomfret?
I think it really, it makes them look inward a little bit. You know, it encourages kids to connect more deeply, perhaps, with peers and faculty here. Not because they're the only options, because as I said, we have lots of places we can go and connections we can make outside of campus. But it does create a very rich social and community feel here. So while we do have day students, about 15% of our students are day students from the surrounding areas. They're here all the time because they want to be, because kids are in community with each other, and the social, as I said, environment is a rich one and an active one. So it just is, you know, we don't have people coming and going, leaving at the end of the school day, gone for the weekends. We're all here together, and that feels really nice.
So yeah, it sounds like a very tight community. How else might you describe the Pomfret community itself and like the Pomfret culture?
Yeah. I use the word warm a lot. It is a very warm and friendly environment. It's very accessible. I feel like it's a place where kids can be themselves and find others like them, but also push outside of their comfort zone and be with people who are completely different from them. And the faculty really love what they do and are very happy to be here. So that relationship piece is an important one. The school community is based on that word, community, and being engaged with one another, sharing of ourselves. We expect our kids to share with us, and so we expect our the adults to also share of themselves, their families and their likes and their dislikes and their homes. That's a real piece of who we are. It's a difficult thing to describe, but it's very easy to feel once you reach our campus.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is a surprising or little known fact about Pomfret?
Right. So we have a greenhouse on campus, was designed and built and is run by students. So it's a fully functioning aquaponics lab, which is pretty neat. And we get some of our vegetables from there. And we also have a really outstanding observatory that is open throughout the year. And that is where our 3 levels of astronomy take place. So those are kind of 2 neat things we have.
Very cool.
Yeah.
What do you think is a favorite dining hall food?
Well, the pizza oven is popular. Definitely the stir fry station, noodles and rice is often has a long line behind it. But there are also lots of ways you can sort of create your own concoction in a dining room. It takes maybe a little time to learn it, but like as soon as you know how to get, your panini and your noodles, you can make, whatever concoction you want. So there's lots of room for options. There's always obviously hot options that are served to us, but usually it's the kids who are creating concoctions in different areas of the dining room that are happiest.
Very cool. What is your favorite annual school tradition?
Oh gosh, there's lots of them. But I would say the Sundial Ceremony is probably what I like the most. And many might say that. It's held both at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year, sort of the place where we ground ourselves. It's certainly a celebration of our senior class. That's first and foremost, allowing them to sort of be the center of attention and begin to sort of set the tone for the year. And so that begins our year. We then process to a ceremony that sort of officially opens the school year academically. And then our Sundial Ceremony at the end of the year is when we thank our seniors and we honor them and we say goodbye. It's very community oriented. It is kind of emotional. It's outside. It's very pretty. But yeah, it's something that I feel really grounds us to start and then gives us an opportunity to be grateful and thank people at the end of the year.
Is there a significance to the sundial, or it's a location on campus?
It's a location on campus. It's a central piece. The spire itself, I'm told, is one of only a couple in the world. And it's just a really neat monument, so to speak. And only seniors can step on the sundial. So unless you're a senior at Pomfret or an alum, you may not step on the base of the sundial until your senior year. So it's also a rite of passage.
Yes.
Yeah.
What is something new and exciting happening at Pomfret?
Well, we're open. That's our most exciting news. We're open. We are working hard to create, an agile course design for individuals to get meaningful and challenging curriculum from wherever they are. But we are open to, right now, only a few kids here for quarantine, but soon we will have upwards of 300 kids on campus. So that's our exciting news. But our new programs that I think are interesting to highlight, we have a certificate program which started 2 years ago, which gives motivated, independent-minded students an opportunity to gain really deep exposure into a specific area of study of their choice while they're here at Pomfret. So the result is a rare and powerful experience that encourages students to pursue a genuine interest with purpose and passion in one of 5 different areas. So the first is social justice. Second would be STEM exploration, artistic expression and design, sustainability, and then global citizenship and awareness. And the certificates are heavy. I mean, they're weighted. They appear on the diploma with distinction and onto the student's transcript. And some students have gained college credit for them as well. So it's neat, but it's a lot of work. It's a whole course that students design for themselves. So very independent work, but exciting.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. What was the hot button issue or controversial issue this past year?
Well, I mean, not to, be the obvious, but it was how to stay connected, through distance. We pride ourselves on that. That's a really important foundational piece of who we are. And it's hard to do through a screen. So we did a good job, I think, in the spring. We learned a lot about what we didn't do well. And I think this fall will be a lot better. This coming fall, we have about 50 or 60 students choosing to learn remotely. And they're a primary focus of ours. They really are. So I'm sure that's true for a lot of schools. That could be the hot button school issue everywhere, but that's ours.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So who are the teachers at Pomfret and what roles do they play in student success?
Oh, well, the teachers are, there's a broad range of faculty here. We have both young and energetic, sort of recently out of graduate school teachers, and we have folks who are a little more seasoned and wise. I guess I'd put myself in between those two, I'm not sure. There's a lot of team teaching actually done here with where, you know, different generations can blend, you know, a group that would complement the complement of experience and energy kind of is a nice way to build some of the work we do. We have as I said, everything from young to more experienced. We have some kids coming in, I say kids, but young adults coming in this year who are just out of grad school. Then we have a handful of faculty who have been here 30 plus years. I would say generally the faculty is in the, you know, maybe the tenure at Pomfret is between the 15 and 20 year. But then we have folks like my husband and I who are seasoned professionals. We've been in education for 20 plus years, but we just joined Pomfret 3 years ago. And our role is one of collaboration, I'd say. You know, we're a strong community, but our goal is to collaborate with our kids, find out what they are passionate and eager to do, and to help them along the way. We work in partnership with them. We definitely support and push them along, but we are sort of the bumpers on the side to be sure that they are on track, and that if and when they fail, because they will fail, we're there to boost them back up. It's a very collaborative effort.
Great.
Yeah.
You mentioned the certificate programs and then also the aquaponics and the observatory, which are all unique.
Yeah.
But I wonder if are there any other types of opportunities or programs that Pomfret offers?
Yeah, there's one more that sometimes we have an independent study program that sometimes leads to the certificate program. So it's not necessarily something that would be going onto their transcript or onto their diploma. But lots of kids want to focus on something that they are passionate about that isn't necessarily going to have to be a full kind of like defendable thesis. And actually just so happens that some of those courses tend to be in the astronomy world. So I go to the independent study workshop every term because it's at the end of every trimester. And quite a few times it's somebody who's doing something different in space, discovering new nebulas or looking at astrophotography, you know, that kind of stuff is always sort of like Greek to me, but I love to listen to them talk about it. Or maybe a kid last year did a program on sign language, American Sign Language, and learning that. Another kid did some work at a local food pantry, not just volunteering his time, but also understanding the plight of the people who are served at that food pantry. So it's independent work, but it's also done in collaboration with a faculty member. No student is on their own doing that. They have an advisor to work with. And then, as I said before, there is a showcase at the end of each term for us to see what they discovered or learned or found out about themselves.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you balance academic rigor and challenge with supporting students?
We try to meet kids where they are individually. And I think that's a really important piece. Upon arrival, you know, it's the advisor's job more than anyone, but certainly the teachers in the classroom as well, to know those kids well, their strengths, maybe some of their challenges, and also what they're focusing on, what their goals might be. So we meet them where they are and we push them to strive and grow and do. But we are really careful about managing balance as well. So we want the academic rigor to be taken advantage of, but we also want our kids well and happy and grounded. So the advisor's role is also really important to sort of manage those expectations and keep them within a range that is healthy for them. Even at the other end of kids who maybe aren't striving or growing or pushing themselves all that hard. That's our other job, is to sort of pick up the rear, and give them the little nudge from behind that they need.
Yep, yep. So beyond just, the academic challenge and support, where do you think Pomfret falls on the spectrum of collaborative or competitive with, students between themselves, especially like in sports or extracurriculars?
Mm-hmm. I don't want to overuse the word, but I think we're much closer to the collaborative side of that spectrum. Though we have ample opportunity for students to challenge themselves, as I mentioned, through some of those programs and through our honors and advanced classes. None of it is done without support, and a lot of hands-on support. Our sports are competitive. Oops, excuse me, I'm going to turn my phone off. I should have done that before. We compete in a competitive league as well. So students who are interested in pursuing athletic endeavors in college are well served by the Pomfret experience. But yeah, I'd say we try to personalize a student's experience as much as we can. There are going to be plenty of kids who are passionate about painting and drawing and want to do very little else. Well, we have to balance that out and give them the chance to, of course, succeed in the classroom as well, in all of their classrooms, but we want to give them all the opportunities that we can for them to explore that and to push beyond the basic levels that we might have. So it's about an individual's experience, and that collaborative piece is really important. And that begins with us knowing our kids as individuals really, really well.
Yeah, great. How do you support international students?
Well, we support all our students as whole individuals, who they are fully. But international students bring really important and unique experiences to our campus, their cultures and their backgrounds. We want them to share, we want them and all of our students to share who they are, and contribute that to our daily lives. So we do encourage that. We do offer opportunities for that to happen. But it's also just, not every student is going to be a very vocal person as they arrive here, but we still want to know what makes them who they are. We want to hear what are they missing from home? What can we add to our community to make it feel more comfortable, so that we know them better. We stay open. Well, this year, as an aside, we are staying open all year. So regardless of whether we need to close for a period of time, or regardless of holidays of any kind, we're going to be open for students. So any of our international students who have arrived already or who are arriving will have a place to live and be cared for until the end of the school year in May. So that's, I think, unique, and I'm really proud that we made that choice to do that. During a regular year, a non-COVID pandemic year, we are open throughout the year and only close 3 times. So the Thanksgiving holiday, the winter holiday, and the spring vacation are 3 times when we do close our campus and people do need to leave. But we have several longer weekends in the fall, winter, and spring where many students will go away, but we don't close our doors for international students, and students who live at a great distance can stay. Or even kids who don't live at a great distance but don't feel like going home can stay. And there's activities, and there's food, and there's coverage of adults around. So that's a nice bonus. Obviously, we provide transportation to and from airports for students when they're leaving. And we work hard on anyone who might need a local family, to be with for one of those shorter holidays. So like the Thanksgiving holiday is only 10 days long or 8 days long. So, not all international students will be able to go home, and we wouldn't expect them to. So we work carefully to provide them with places to go and families to be with.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have an example of exceptional student growth that you've seen at Pomfret? Maybe a student who's come to campus and was one way, and through their experience became somebody else or
Yeah,
more
yeah.
of themselves.
There's so many.
Yeah, I'm
There's
sure.
so many. I have to write to Annie and tell her at some point because I often talk about her. She graduated last year. Annie Wang from Shanghai. She was one of those students who arrived on the quiet side, a little more reserved. She loved art, but hadn't been encouraged by her teachers to be an artist. Wasn't told she was, very good at it. So didn't pursue that right away, but came out of her shell in the most miraculous way while she was here. Ended up graduating, first in her class, key head, math team, a 3-season athlete. And in her chapel speech, sorry, I should go back, and it's another rite of passage for our seniors. So every senior will give a talk to the community at some point during their year. And it can be about anything they wish. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's deeply emotional. It's just their way to address the community in their own personal way and style. And in her chapel speech, Annie mentioned that she, hadn't been encouraged to pursue art. She thought she was artistic, she loved it, but she didn't have that support. And when she got to Pomfret, it reemerged. We have a 9th grade arts immersion program. So she was in the labs and in the studios and in classes where she was asked to explore this again, and it was reborn for her. And she ended up being, obviously a tremendous artist, and has put her portrait on our walls, and was able to complement her experience here. She is a math enthusiast, and she is studying economics now at Brown in college, but she was able to balance her love of art and create, a hybrid experience for herself here that she may not have had she not been given that opportunity. So Annie's, she's sort of one of my poster kids.
Right, yeah. So what are the qualities that make for an attractive candidate to Pomfret? Just thinking from an admissions perspective, and
Right.
what do you think makes a student a good fit for Pomfret?
A student who's willing to dive in, and share of themselves, not just in the classroom, but in the dorm, on the playing fields, in the studios. Someone who's willing to take some risks and fail. I mean, failure is a necessary part of growth. Without challenge, there is no change. So someone who's we're always very impressed at hearing about people's awards and accolades, but mostly we want to know that someone's going to be able to identify and pursue some passions here, and also share them with others, because we gain as much from our kids as we give them. So yeah, that's somebody we'd be really interested in learning more about.
Great. What do you think are the primary pieces of information, or what sort of indicators do you look at to help you determine if a student is going to dive in and contribute to the Pomfret campus?
Right. Yeah. Well, just sort of what I mentioned before is just how relatable they are, and how well they can express themselves and tell us, either in words or writing, who they are and what makes them tick. We want to know about a kid's quirks. We want to know about a kid's passions. We want to know about a kid's challenges. And we also want to know that they're going to be willing to take some support, to take some direction when needed. But we also want, those things matter, because we want to know, are they going to be able to make friends in the dorm? Are they going to be comfortable, on the playing fields? Because all of that is part of the community, the experience here. It's not just coming to do art or play soccer or study science. It's all of that. So they have to be ready to challenge themselves. But we also really want to know what they love and whether they'll fit in.
Yeah. So in the application process, since we have some families in Asia who are particularly aware of testing and concerned about test scores, whether it be, English proficiency tests or the SSAT. What role does testing and test scores play in the application process at Pomfret?
Right. At the outset, I will say we're beyond test scores. We're much more about engagement. Having said that, we do ask for some testing that helps us know a kid. It's a part of what makes a kid whole, right? So this current year coming, we're going to be test optional for the SSATs. We are certainly willing to take those scores if people want to share them, because sometimes that does help us understand a kid, and some kids want that shared. Certainly for the writing piece, I would say is a big component there, but that is optional because it's so difficult to get testing. The TOEFL test is an important piece for us in terms of language proficiency, and a student would need to have 100 or higher to move forward in our process. And anyone attending a school in China would also need to submit a Vericant. Those are very useful for us. But because we don't offer an ESL support program, we don't offer English as a second language, students really need to have a high level of English proficiency. And that's generally, distinguishable in the Vericant. So that's important to us, but really we are way beyond test scores. Having said that, we have some parameters, but it's really much more about engagement and how well will they engage.
Yeah. So with that, mention of Vericant and also thinking about the interview, as I don't know, a separate piece. Could you explain also how you use Vericant for international students from China? And then, is that the kind of filter or screening, and then you do the interview afterward? And then what role does the interview play in the overall process?
Right. So actually, this year, Vericant is being used in a very different way for us. We've always used it as a complement piece. This year, it is a requirement, purely based on numbers. I mean, we had, it's just, we're trying to manage the flow. So in many cases, the Vericant interview will be their interview. So there will be the other supporting documents, obviously their application, their recommendations, their writing. But in many cases, the Vericant issue will serve as their interview. In some cases, if we need to know more about someone or something wasn't clear, we will invite them for a Zoom interview. And all students, regardless of where they are coming from, every student this year will be interviewed over Zoom. So that will be a level playing field.
Okay, all right, that's good to know. And then in terms of, how you utilize the interview, as you mentioned, to understand a student's engagement, are there particularly telling questions or things that you like to know about a student through the interview, or what sorts of questions or information are you trying to elicit?
I think authenticity, and that's hard in any form of interview. I mentioned earlier, like, of course, we're so excited to hear about people's, awards and accolades and achievements. That doesn't help us. A lot of our students who are applying are incredibly talented, incredibly skilled, incredibly gifted. We almost, expect that. So more than anything, we want to see the authentic side. And I do feel like that is achievable through Vericant. I think they do a really good job of teasing that out. When that's in question, when that's not clear, that's when we might invite someone to have an additional Zoom interview, and we might push in on a little bit of that sort of character piece. And I mean, obviously, without being able to see someone in person, have them here and shake their hand and walk around with them, there's a lot to be missed. So our goal is to determine somebody's, as best we can, truer self. And I think a lot of what VeriCant does is good in that way. Is they're less scripted than maybe just watching, or even sometimes in-person interviews here are scripted because people have their favorite questions and so forth. But yeah, I think we're going to trust that that the work they do and the way they prod into an applicant in that process is going to be valuable for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. So my final question is, what advice might you have for students or families who are embarking on the boarding school application process?
Mm-hmm. Be yourself. Again, back to that authentic piece. Be yourself as you search for the schools. Look for things that matter to you, that are important to you as an individual. And then, take advantage of all of what a school will offer. There will be webinars, there will be virtual tours, there'll be a way to connect with students. That's going to happen for every school throughout this fall and even into the winter and spring. But as they look, it's hard to do it virtually, but we're getting better at it because we've done it for so long. But can you imagine yourself there? Can you imagine yourself being happy in that environment? Listen to what the kids who are there are saying. And, be honest with yourself. Not everybody is made for every school, and there's so many wonderful schools out there. You can't pick a bad one, but you want to pick the right one. And that's about being honest with yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great advice. Well, thank you so much, Sabrina.
Yeah.
Excited to share Pomfret with our families.
Thank you very much. We are very excited to share it too.
Yeah, even in these strange times.
Yeah, it is strange, and I honor that, and we honor that this will be an unusual year, but we're going to do everything we can to help kids understand who we are, and also do our very best to understand who they are.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah.